Andrew Losey attended Dartmouth, a private Ivy League research university located in Hanover, New Hampshire. In 2008, he pledged to the fraternity of Sigma Alpha Epsilon and had to endure some incredibly horrific acts for the sake of brotherhood. In his 2012 memoir, Confessions of an Ivy League Frat Boy, he hoped to shed some light on the dark activity that went on during initiations. He says that pledges had to swim in a kiddie pool filled with vomit, urine, fecal matter, semen, and rotten food products. They were also made to eat omelets made of vomit, chug cups of vinegar, which in one case caused a pledge to vomit blood, and even drink beer poured down fellow pledges' ass cracks. By the end of his pledge term, Andrew Losey had vomited so much that the enamel on his teeth had mostly burned away. In 1994, 25-year-old Michael Davis attended Southeast Missouri State University and pledged to the fraternity Kappa Alpha Psi. On one evening, the journalism student suffered a merciless attack from several chapter members as part of a hazing ritual. During the brutal beating, Michael Davis collapsed. He was then thrown in the back seat of a car. The fraternity members stopped to get food at a Taco Bell, instead of driving Davis to the hospital that is located directly across the street. They then drove the unconscious man home and put him in bed. When he started foaming at the mouth, the fraternity brothers called 911 and lied to the rescue workers by telling them that Davis had been injured playing football. He had broken ribs, a lacerated kidney, a lacerated liver, and bruises all over his chest, neck, back, and arms. He died from bleeding in his brain. 7 members of the fraternity eventually pled guilty or were convicted of involuntary manslaughter. In 2013, the Wilmington College fraternity Gamma Phi Gamma hazed a man so much that he lost one of his testicles. In mid-October, blindfolded pledges were brought to the basement of the frat house, known as Gobbler House. The basement of the house contained about 3 inches of water, and pledges were ordered to lie on the floor and imitate a swimming action. They were then directed to strip completely nude except for the blindfold, and had icy hot applied to their nipples, back, buttocks, and scrotum. The pledges were then hid with towels and shirts that had the ends balled up in knots, or which had items inside them to inflict pain. Pledge Tyler Lawrence, 19, was struck in the testicles with a towel fashioned as a weapon. He instantly fell to the floor and was transported to a local hospital, where he underwent surgery to have a testicle removed as a result of the inflicting blow. 2 weeks later, police searched the frat house and found a host of incriminating evidence that were used in acts of hazing. 14 were charged with hazing and assault, even though Tyler never pressed charges. He calls it a freak accident and is still an active member of the fraternity. Officers pulled the bodies of 22-year-old Kristen High and 24-year-old Kennetha Saphir from the water just before midnight in early September. The girls were both pledges of the sorority Alpha Kappa Alpha at Cal State University. Eyewitnesses state that they'd spent hours doing calisthenics, running up and down the beach. As a part of their initiation, they were both ordered to walk backward into the ocean. Timidly, Kennetha took steps backward toward the rushing waters. A wave hit Kennetha and knocked her down. Kristen knew Kennetha couldn't swim, so she went in after her. Both were dragged by high waves under the water. Unable to make it back to shore, they both drowned. The sorority denied responsibility and said there was no official chapter at Cal State LA. No criminal charges were ever filed against anyone involved. The Alpha Kappa Alpha chapter they were pledging to had already been suspended for hazing and was likely conducting an unsanctioned hazing ritual for new members. Kristen was a mother of 2. Matthew Carrington was a student of California State University, Chico. In 2005, he died while pledging the fraternity Chi Tau during Hell Week. He was forced to do calisthenics, push-ups, and answer trivia for hours in a basement that was leaking raw sewage. According to NPR, he was made to drink continuously from a 5-gallon water jug. During the ordeal, he urinated and vomited on himself, and finally had a seizure. He died from water intoxication and swelling of the brain. Gabriel Mastretti, one of the men responsible for Carrington's hazing death, will spend 1 year in jail. He says, "I did what I did out of a misguided sense of building brotherhood, and instead I lost a brother. I will live with the consequences of hazing for the rest of my life." Carrington's death prompted legislators to create Matt's Law, which allows felony prosecution for serious hazing abuse in the state of California. In 2002, 18-year-old Kent Murphy was a football player at Methodist College, located in Fayetteville, North Carolina. After a game, 7 of his teammates tried to pin him down. The players then stripped off his pants and underwear and attempted to write on his bare buttocks with a marker. When he resisted, one of the players sexually assaulted Murphy with the marker. After the Sharpie was continuously rammed into Murphy's anus, he suffered irreparable damage. The college expelled one of the football players accused of assaulting Murphy and placed the other 6 on disciplinary probation. Campus police charged all 7 players, but the charges were dismissed when a state court of appeals ruled that enforcement of state laws by a religious institution is unconstitutional. Before the civil trial began, the case was settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. Cory Laudaly was a freshman and hockey player at the University of Vermont in 1999. On one evening, the upperclassmen on the varsity team gathered up all the team's new recruits with a mission to utterly humiliate them in the name of team bonding. Cory knew about the event weeks prior and tried to warn school officials, but nothing was done to stop the party. The men, including Cory, were made to drink warm beer and eat pie filled with barbecue sauce filling. Anyone who vomited had to do so in a communal bucket. They were then made to do nude push-ups with cups of beer placed under their naked genitals. Then the 9 fully naked freshmen were made to do the elephant walk, which meant to walk in a single file line while holding the genitals of the person in front of you. 2 months after the incident, Cory sued the school, its president and athletic director, and several teammates. He settled out of court for over $100,000. Let's go back to Dartmouth to hear the story of Revi Seagal. She decided to pledge Kappa Kappa Gamma as a sophomore in 2006. After being blinded by her fellow pledges, she was made to get in the back seat of a car and drink a 64-ounce jug filled with an alcoholic concoction. After 15 minutes of drinking, she was kicked out of the car. While laying on the side of the road, she lost consciousness. She woke up the next morning in the ICU with bruises all over her body and 2 broken teeth. Above all, her blood alcohol content was 0.399. When a person has a 0.4 blood alcohol content, they often go into an alcohol-induced coma and even die. Revi was literally 1 sip away from dying. In 2010, Amon Carter IV attended Texas Christian University. At a frat party, he was branded with a red-hot clothes hanger while he was sleeping. Carter was on a winter break ski trip in Colorado with his fellow members of the Kappa Sigma fraternity and the Tri Delta sorority. Everyone there was thoroughly intoxicated, including Carter. He originally consented to being branded with the Kappa Gamma letters on his buttocks, but he was drunk at the time. After Carter passed out, the fraternity and sorority members held a metal wire over the stove until it was bright orange. They branded one side of his buttock and then continued to brand his other cheek with random overlapping designs. What was left was a jumbled mess of burnt flesh and deep tissue scars. Repairing the burned area required multiple surgeries. Robert Champion, a 26-year-old student of Florida A&M, died shortly after a vicious attack from the school's marching band. According to members of the band, in order to earn respect as a drum major, you had to endure a ruthless hazing ritual. It involves running from the front of a pitch-black bus to the back, all while getting kicked, hit with fists, drumsticks, and bass drum mallets. The ritual is called Crossing Bus C, after 2 of his fellow drum majors succeeded at making making it to the back of the bus, it was Robert Champion's turn. He received blows to the head, arms, and torso. At least one band member jumped from seat to seat to get to the back of the bus to get another chance at punching Champion. This went on for at least 5 minutes before he eventually touched the back wall. He collapsed, gasping for air, and claimed that he couldn't see, even though his eyes were wide open. One person tried to perform CPR on Champion as the ambulance arrived. The medical examiner would say he died from hemorrhagic shock due to internal bleeding from blunt force trauma. 15 FAMU band members were charged in the case. Most were sentenced to combinations of community service and probation. The purported ringleader, Dante Martin, was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison. 3 of the drum majors charged with Champion's death escorted the casket during the funeral.